All right, team. So today we're working on a 2011 Hyundai Elantra, replacing the starter. So here we are at the bottom. That blue cylinder there is the oil filter, and right above the oil filter, there's the starter. This bracket was already out of the way, so I do have some extra bolts, so we'll go ahead and attach that on there. So along the front side of the starter, there's two bolts, one there, one there. They're both 14 millimeter. Then you do have the power cable. It's right here. That should be an 8 or a 10 millimeter. Can't really remember right off the bat, but let's go ahead and start cracking open these first two bolts. So the 14 millimeter, starting from the bottom. Let me go ahead and put the camera down here. Have you a good angle. I can use two hands if I need to. There we go. Let's go ahead and get that. And I was thinking about going from the top to try and rotate it, but there's not that much space. So I just went back down and did it the way that I was doing it. I said, really, this job is super easy. It's just taking 3 bolts off. The first 2, the ones that mounts onto the front, and then the one that's connected to the power cable itself. So once we remove these 2 bolts, we'll be able to go ahead and get the starter out of there. All right, and there's one. There we are, going up to the top. This one's a little trickier because it's hard to see it, but if you feel around, it'll take a little bit of time, but you will be able to go ahead and get it off as well. There's no rush to do the job, so just take your time and make sure that it gets undone correctly. And obviously with the wire harness right there, it is taking a little bit more time than the bottom bolt, but as you can see, it's moving. It'll be coming out here soon. So also I did want to point out the particles that keep falling from it. This is another reason why it's a good idea to be wearing safety glasses anytime you're working on a vehicle. Protect your eyes at all times. So here I am undoing the bolt from the top while I hold with my other hand the starter itself. There's bolt 2. So now we'll move over towards the rear, pull out the starter. Now there is a clip here that we will have to go ahead and take off. But one thing I did forget to do before I started taking off these bolts and before I removed that power cable is to disconnect the battery. Now first, obviously, you want to go ahead and disconnect the battery before you start doing the job. You don't want to go ahead and have any kind of electrical feedback that could fry the battery or the alternator or the brand new starter that you're putting in. So definitely go ahead and disconnect the battery and then come down and disconnect everything else from there. So the biggest thing while I'm doing that, when you're doing a starter on this vehicle from 2011 to 2014, both the 1.8 and the 2.0 liter engine, it will determine if it's, you need to know if it's a Korea-made Hyundai Elantra or if it's an actual USA-made Hyundai Elantra. Now, the only difference saying that is because there's going to be two different types of teeth. The Korean one has more teeth that go into the actual starter portion of everything, while the American one does not. I believe the Korean one has something like 14 to 19 little teeth for those gears. So definitely want to make sure you know where your vehicle is made. So now that I disconnected the battery, I'm going to go ahead and remove the power cable now. Just grabbing the right socket to make sure that that'll go ahead and fit in there and be easily smooth taken out. So it's a 12 millimeter right here. That's what it turns out is the actual size for the original starter that was in the vehicle. So let's get that on there and get this bolt off. Now we can just unscrew it by hand. Well, it's still a little snug, so let's go a little bit more. And now by hand. So there's the bolt. So we're going to remove the starter off of, the power cable off the starter. And then what I'm going to do is re-thread that bolt so we don't lose it. Now it's just going ahead and sliding out the starter. Just give it a little wiggle. Slowly taking it out. Just make sure you don't yank on it, otherwise you're going to pull that harness out. And there we go. Now there's this little connection tab here. Just go ahead and push down and pull out. And there we go. Now here are the two new ones. The one on the bottom is the new one on the top is the old one. As you can see, the same amount of teeth. Everything looks to be the same. Checking everything out. So everything looks good. So let's go ahead and get this in. So when you're putting it in, slowly get it up there. Now as you're putting it in, make sure you wiggle it in so that way it seeds all the way in. If it doesn't seed all the way, just like that. If it doesn't seed all the way in, then the gears aren't making a connection and the starter isn't doing anything, and you could tear up those the gear heads. So let's go ahead and get a bolt in, hold it in place. Of course, throwing it on by hand to make sure not to cross thread. There we go, just snugging it up. Now we'll grab the top one. Put that on there. Like I say, just take your time. Don't want to cross thread. And then this simple job is going to end up taking you a lot longer. There we go. So now let's go ahead and get the ratchet on it and tighten everything down. Now normally what I'll do is go ahead and snug it on tight and then try and do like at least a quarter of a turn more just to kind of hold it in place. Just make sure it's tight. There we go, all in. So now we'll go to the back and connect the power cable. So now it's a different size bolt that's on here right now. So that one's a 14 now as well. So we can go ahead and get a 14 millimeter socket. I was just checking to make sure that one fit. In my hand, just undoing the bolt. And then we're going to go ahead and get the power cable on there. Just trying to move that harness out of the way a little bit to give me a little more space, but it's really not working. So we're just going to go ahead and connect the connection here to the top. Get that in until you hear it snap. Just like that. Now we'll get the power cable on, slide that on. Make sure we get those tabs into the grooves. Now we'll take the bolt and start threading it on, hand tighten. Now we'll come in with the ratchet and the socket. Tighten it up. Now when you're putting this one on, you don't have to be super hard or tight on there, just enough to where it's not going to go, not going to loosen up, it'll stick on there. And just a little more. And there we go. we're going to go ahead and slide the cover over it. Make sure that's good. Alright, so now that's on there. So now we're going to go ahead and get this bracket that was loose. Don't want it flying all over the place, possibly getting into the radiator fan and damaging that. So it just took me a minute to figure out exactly how the bracket went. Since I wasn't the one that took it off. So there's found the bolt hole there. Now here's an extra 10mm bolt that I had with me. I'm gonna go ahead and secure that on. And then we just hand tightened it, making sure again not to cross thread. Now 10mm socket. Now we'll go ahead and tighten it down. There we go, nice and tight. And see, I can get these looms into place, but it looks like all of them are broken off, so there's really nothing I can do about that, but at least now that bracket is secure. So, and that's it. And that's how you replace a starter in a 2011 Hyundai Elantra. So if this video helped, please like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for more videos.